everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of The Jump Show. I'm Tom Ball, and I'm delighted to be part of such a prestigious podcast as this one, alongside such an esteemed gentleman as Dan Overall.
Absolutely.
Great to see you, Dan. Good
Likewise,
Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we're in person. This isn't a permanent arrangement for anyone who might be concerned.
Quite low tech, actually.
It really is. Yeah. You could not literally the lights on a pillow behind the laptop. No, mate, it's great to have you on.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm delighted to be here. And Jake Price as well. Jake, do you have a good New Year?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Yeah, just absolutely buzzing to get into the Cheltenham Festival stuff now. It's what we live for, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is very much a Cheltenham Festival series starter, this episode, focusing on Ante-Post Selections ahead of the festival. And with that in mind, we're going to be looking back at Christmas and also looking ahead to Cheltenham. First up, let's talk over the festivities, the period that's just ensued, where we saw plenty of pretty exciting animals in action. Obviously, Kempton, Leopardstown, Limerick, plenty of graded performances to note. And Dan, we'll start with you. Plenty to kind of stick your teeth into. What did you take out of it?
Well, my festive period was based around the idea that Leopardstown would win the King George and nothing could possibly beat it. For anyone who saw the video of me on Twitter riding that little horse on a stick, I don't even know what they call them, that backfired pretty badly. And I got a few pelters for it. But I think that race was a pretty solid one. Obviously, Leopardstown is a horse I hold very near and dear to my heart. He's
so likable, isn't he?
Exactly that. His performance in the Brown Advisory last year at Cheltenham, I thought, was top notch. I know people are maybe crabbing it now with obviously Hoyce and you're letting it down, but I thought he's still a top class animal, and I think there's little doubt that going back to Cheltenham or a track like that will suit him better. Obviously, he jumped more markedly left than he probably ever has done at Kempton. He didn't look to be enjoying a moment of it, and despite that, he was obviously still bang there. I'm a bit of a soft unseat at the last, but he wasn't going to get to Brainman's game. But
I think that's a mark of his talent, isn't it? That even jumping left all the way around in a King George, he can still be bang there.
And literally, at no stage, I watched that race back. I was never happy watching it, and looking back, I was like, yeah, this horse was never really travelling. And I say at one stage, I got really excited because I saw Brainman's getting pushed along the bend. I thought, this horse doesn't find anything. He never finds, and all of a sudden, he's found. For the first time in his career, I think he proved that he actually does find when asked. And fair play to Brainman's game. We know that's been his aim for a long time now. Obviously, now they're going to go to Cheltenham. He's a fascinating contender in it. I think the race is going to be better for his involvement. Will he be able to win that? I would have my doubts there. I wouldn't be in a rush to back him for it at this stage. But fair play to Brainman's game. He had his big day. I don't think we'll probably get another one until maybe Aintree.
No, I would probably agree with that. Although it was interesting, wasn't it, when Paul Nicholls after the race said that this is a stronger horse this year.
Yep.
He goes up the gallop much better than he did last year. He's obviously got a scopy frame and he's filled into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But even saying that, there was plenty of talk, isn't there, the last week? I know he can't run the Ryanair now because he's been taken out, but there was plenty of chat about that, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, I think obviously people see his cruising speed, and obviously the doubts about Allaho. Obviously, look at the market for the number no bet. You've got Allaho and Galopin de Champs, basically even money a pair. And there is a chance that neither turn up, and after that, it blows the race wide open. I guess they could supplement him, could they? But I mean, it's not in Paul Nicholls' nature.
Well,
he's not going to shirk.
Gold Cup or
he's
nothing,
declared Gold Cup now. He's not going to shirk it. That's not in his nature. But yeah, I mean, he adds something to that race, definitely. Like, it's always good to have the King George winner in the Gold Cup, because sometimes we've had pretty weak King George winners and it hasn't really been a factor, but it will be this year. It'll be a piece of form we're probably talking about all the way up to March.
Yeah, definitely. And Royal Pug Eye back in third running a screamer as well. Jake, what did you make of the action over Christmas?
Yeah, the one I wanted to bring up first is Dice Like Dynamo, who obviously made his chase debut over at Leopardstown on the 27th. And I just thought it was a really, really nice performance. Like, forget what he beat, forget the horses in behind. It doesn't matter.
Nothing.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is, he jumped so well, and he's kind of reminds me a bit of Undersow in the way that they both didn't respect hurdles whatsoever, and now they're going over fences. And he just looked so much more settled, didn't he? Like, he jumped them all perfectly, and he was actually like taking his time and making sure that he was getting them right. So yeah, I think he's going to be a proper live Arkle contender. It looks like with Appreciate It running this weekend that the Irish Arkle will probably be his next port of call, which obviously is a good trial for the Arkle. You can't be upset about that. So if he goes there and is Paul Townend's choice, he could end up doing the same thing again, and then he would be a very, very serious contender for the Arkle. So yeah, I thought he was the one for me. Not saying that El Fabiolo and El Appreciate It can't do the same thing and improve again. But I thought El Fabiolo, if you're going to be picky, his jumping wasn't as good as Appreciate It and Dysart Dynamos. And, you know, with the current state of the Arco, I just want to take on John Bomb or something. So, yeah, Dysart's my shout at the minute.
Well, it's shaping up into a pretty exciting article, isn't it, with John Bon and the three big Irish raiders as well. Dan, just quickly on that, if you had a kind of free tenner, who would you put it on for the article at the moment?
I'd probably be with Appreciate It currently. I mean, it's an interesting race because for now we've seen 3 of Willie's make all, and obviously tactically you're thinking, how is this really going to pan out if they all get there come March? I mean, I think I sent Jake a message bang after that race. I think he mentioned Dysart before. I think he backed him before. And I said, I can't wait for John Bon and Dysart Dynamo to take each other on at the front and blow the race wide open again. It happened in Supreme. It could probably happen in an Arkle. I do want to see Dysart go to a spring festival perform first. I wouldn't still be 100% convinced. Definitely a talented horse, but I'd be with Appreciate It. If you gave me a free tenner now, it would be straight on Appreciate It, to be honest.
Okay, very interesting. I've been trying to kind of raise the English flag a bit about how we're going to do much better in the coming years. I mean, obviously, last year we started to kind of make our way back a bit with Constitution Hill and John Bon, who ran a blinder in the Supreme as well. And hopefully, I'm thinking this year with Hermes Allen as well, who won the Challow. He looks like a fairly exciting prospect. He was one of mine to take out at Christmas. The other couple that I had were Jerry Colombe. I thought he was brilliant at Limerick. He's a horse who I've always really liked. Yeah. Yes, he's unbeaten. He's got a brilliant record. He only just seems to do enough. But I love his attitude. He's not flashy.
No.
He's just a grinder. And I really like that about him. And I think we're yet to get to the bottom of him. And I think it's a fairly big bottom as well. He'll need soft ground at the festival. We know that. But I can see him easily being a Brown advisory contender for sure. And the way that he drew clear in the closing stages, having, you know, jumped a little skew if at a couple and done the back straight, I thought was pretty impressive. The other one I wanted to mention was Balco Coastal for Nicky Henderson.
That's the English flag raising there. Yeah.
Enough of that Irish nonsense.
Exactly. Back to the more important stuff. He's a chaser. He's actually a horse, a herder and chaser. Who I've always thought promised a lot, but hadn't really delivered. But at Kempton, I thought, hang on, here we go. We're starting to see the engine now. We're powering.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive, I thought.
Yeah, well, they've been big on him for a while. Like, I think coming into the season, it was John Bon and Balco Coastal were like the 2 big hopes in the novice chase division for Nicky. The first time was to say a blip would be an understatement. It was pretty poor, but as you say, back in the right direction now. I think Mark 144. Did you say?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So options there. Obviously, for the proper handicaps, need 4 runs as a novice these days, which is important to bear in mind when looking at these festival handicaps. And trust me, I will be doing that over the coming weeks.
It's a really good point, that actually. Really
it's going to blow these races wide open because we've seen it time and time again. They arrive with 3 runs, like it happens in the Kim Muir a lot. You get plenty of novices who train over intermediate trips and step up in that. They're going to need an extra run. The County, obviously being a big one, the Martin Pipe. Those races now, trainers are going to have to be screwed on to get them there in time and with the adequate qualifications. So they might just become more conventional handicaps rather than novice plot jobs. But I guess we'll see. That's something to monitor over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, it certainly is. One handicapper who we should touch on before we move on, who, I mean, I think blew everyone's breath away, was Maxim at Leopardstown. I mean, it was the most extraordinary performance. Jake, what did you think of that? I mean, it was as though he just dropped in at the final furlong and he scampered away. And I think he took about 2 or 3 furlongs to be pulled up in the end.
Yeah, it's classic Gordon Elliott, isn't it? Getting one in off a very low mark, ridiculously lower than it should be. It was a very good performance. But I think the problem you're going to have with him now is that the English handicapper is not going to be happy about that. He's going to, put him up. I think in Ireland, he's already gone up to the mid 130s, hasn't he? Or maybe even higher. So I would say you're looking at least 145 in the UK, which
he went up £18 for that win in Ireland.
There you go,
138.
138. Yeah, that's what I thought. It was.
It could have been harsher.
It could, literally. Yeah. You wouldn't go any less, would you?
Yeah. Yes.
So the English handicap is going to add at least £7 onto that minimum. So yeah, that's something you've got to contend with. But who knows where his ceiling is? I've seen some people saying that he could be a stayers hurdle type, which isn't the worst shout in the world.
Well, you've seen, you say it's typical Gordon Elliott, but it isn't because he normally doesn't get him to win the Pertemps qualifier. It's normally right in the last qualifying place. This time we've now got 2 complete plot jobs at the head of a Pertemps market. We've both won a qualifier. As he shoot first being the other one. Like, this is unprecedented. So what they've done somehow, they obviously wanted to make it a bit less of a farce really to qualify clearly by reducing the places to 4. But now we've just got 2 plots. We've just won a race and have still got plenty more in hand. I mean, the betting on the day, if they both go to the Thames, is going to be, I think, hilarious.
Do you know something that you're going to find hilarious and probably farcical about this? Go on. Is that when I saw Maxim win that, I thought to myself, Stayers Hurdle is a really weak race.
We say this every year. Yeah, we're looking for any.
He's won that like a horse who's going places. I know he's only on 138 now, but I mean, if that underestimates him, he could go up another 10, 15 pounds.
Who was it? Was it Ronald Pump who won a qualifier or came second in the qualifier? And it was like off a mark in the high 140s. I think it might have been that one as well, and then went on to finish second in the Stayers.
It can be done.
Yeah, it can be done.
Goroska.
He did lose to Liza Goroska. That's a bit of a blip there, admittedly. But it's one of those where we're always looking for another running to win that race, right? And literally after the Charlie Hall, people were putting up a Hoisin-Yaw for the Stayers Hurdle. Yeah, so we're always looking for something. And hey, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world, but if you've got a horse who could run in a handicap like that off the mid to low 140s, Gordon is not going to be.
No, it's fairy tale thinking, really.
Yeah.
But I think he was just that impressive, wasn't he? And we also saw on New Year's Day a couple of really good performances. And Dan, I know you want to talk about James de Burley, who's been one of those hype horses that's been talked about for a while.
Yeah, so for anyone who may have watched the SBK Big Jump, this is where I plug my other stuff. And people who've watched this in the past will know. We did a preview for SBK with the big jumps off there. And he was my Ante-Post selection for the Brown Advisory. I think 2025 to 1 he was back then. Hadn't seen him for a year, or over a year. Obviously, he was missed all of last season, but high-class horse in France, grade 1 form over there. They threw him in the champion hurdle on his first start. I think he'd only been with Willie about 2 months before he did that. Then second in the Stayers at Punchestown to Classical Dream. Another great effort. And he looked a pretty solid jumper, I thought. He wasn't spectacular. I wouldn't say 10 out of 10. 7 or 8, I'd say, for jumping. The time did compare quite favourably as well with the Mares Chase on the same card that was won by Scarlet and Dove. There's obviously no back number, so I think he was a few seconds quicker, carrying obviously a fair bit more weight as well. Now the dilemma is, I backed him for the 3 miler, and I think anyone who watched that, he was, to say pretty keen would maybe be a bit of an understatement. He was clearly quite fresh, and I think Darryl got off him and said, I've never sat on a Willie horse that's been this fresh before.
In a way, maybe a little bit understandable?
Oh, completely understandable, but also, it's now more understandable that they would be probably thinking 2.5 or more. I mean, we're going to find out more in the flow gas, right? That's his natural next step. I think those races, I'm still not a big Marty Potter fan. I still think he's vulnerable. The 3 mile division, I think, is a complete mess, really, at the minute. Obviously, the Nice Guy's absence has added a lot of unknowns about that race. I still
more intrigue, if anything.
Yeah, big time. It's a competitive betting heat, and I took a long time looking at that as looking to the future and these selections earlier. But I'd still like to believe that in a better race and given cover, like he was ridden at Punchestown, he was ridden really cold that day, ridden to stay. I think there's potential still as a 3 miler. I know he's probably, at the minute, if you said where's he going to go, I'd go say probably the Turners. But I think in a better race, get some cover, obviously freshness shaken out of him. There's still potential, I think, as a 3 mile horse there, for sure.
He's certainly got loads of ability, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Really enjoyed watching him over the Christmas period. Apart from the Veterans Chase at Warwick, which was one of the most fantastic finishes you'll see in the last few months, another really exciting climax to a race was in the New Year's Day Chase at Tremor, which took place and was a kind of battle royale, if you will, between Manella Indo and Statler. And in the end, Manella Indo got the upper hand just under a brilliant Rachel Blackmore ride, I have to say. Really excellent in the saddle. But Jake, I don't know which one you favour out of those two going forward.
Yeah, it's got to be Statler for me. You got to remember, it's his 4th chase start, which is, inexperience in abundance compared to Manella Indo, who's a Gold Cup winner. And then if you look at the ratings before the race, he was rated £10 inferior, yet he was trying to give £8 to Manella Indo over a trip that was a mile shorter than on his last start. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic performance from Statler. Obviously, it was both their season reappearance. Manella Indo ended up getting the inside running rail, didn't he, over the last, and that probably helped him just get up on the line there. But Statler, I don't think he did anything wrong with the feet. As I said, he was trying to give £8 to a previous Gold Cup winner like that. That's some mean feat, no matter what Manella Indo has been up to in the last season. So, I thought Statler was very, very positive. The only reason I'm not putting him in this show, actually, is because I think he might go for the Irish Gold Cup next. And if he got beat there, then obviously his price is probably going to get a bit bigger than it is now. So I don't think it's, one that you need to jump into. The Gold Cup is always a race I normally leave till closer to the day, because obviously ground is so important to it. But yeah, I think it's that very much enhances credentials, and he's an exciting horse that, as we were talking about Brabant's game, will add to the Gold Cup.
That was exactly my thinking, actually, the Irish Gold Cup angle. Like, I know he's been put up in a lot of places in the past few, and I understand it completely. Like, he's definitely a big each way player in that race, but I think he was initially 14s, I think. Now I think he can get best price 10s, and I'd say I'd be happy to hold off. Definitely a horse of interest, but given what's coming up potentially, if he runs into Galopin Des Champs, you could easily see him, if he's staying on second or third, you could see him drifting a couple of points, or at least staying the same. And there's no need to take that risk now when you can wait a couple of weeks.
No, I would argue that that's very fair. Do you think, Jake, that we're likely to glean more information about the Gold Cup from the New Year's Day chase at Tramore than we are from the Savills chase at Leopardstown?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it depends on your opinion of Conflated, doesn't it? If you think of him as a Leopardstown specialist, which is what he's kind of developed into, then you'd have to say that the Tramore chase would probably be more, it'll give us more clues. But the problem, obviously, we're going to hopefully see them all clash in the Irish Gold Cup anyway. If everything went to plan. Obviously, they don't have a whole bunch of options over that side of the Irish Sea before the Gold Cup. So, I think time will tell, and it's not really the race at Leopardstown wasn't that great. We kind of knew that. Obviously, it was a shame that Aplutar came out, but it'd be interesting to see if we see him at Leopardstown next month as well.
Yeah, he's a really interesting contender if he comes back to his best. I really hope he does. I mean, we all do, don't we?
Yeah, and you are putting a lot in, obviously, now with the little knock he had and the little doubts there. It's just more doubts upon more doubts. And I'm sure some will be tempted by the price of the years. As you look back and watch that race last season, I mean, that will probably sucker some people in, but it takes a bit of a leap of faith at this stage. If they don't get a run into him, obviously they'll probably try and get one into him, because you think you need to, but it would take a bit of faith to back him at this stage.
Yeah, it would do, and he'd need another really slowly run Gold Cup, and they're not going to do that again, are they?
No, well, it depends. I mean, if it was slowly run, I mean, that would also probably suit Galopin Des Champs as well, wouldn't it? Obviously, he's got 2.5 mile speed, so.
Yeah. And Brabant's game.
And Brabant's game, yeah. So call it a sprint. Yeah.
Oh, excellent stuff. Anything else then from the Christmas period from either of you guys?
Nope, I think that's it for me.
I've covered a lot. I mean, there's so much, isn't there? I think we could be here till the sun comes up. A lot to tuck into, and I'm sure, in time with our selection, we'll probably cover a lot of it to come as well in the future weeks and months.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so let's move on then to some selections for the Cheltenham Festival, Ante-Post Selections, and this is the first week we're going to be looking at them. And as always, it comes with a lot of excitement, doesn't it? And a lot of intrigue as to what everyone's thinking at certain points. And I'm glad to say that we're going to have a couple of fairly big price options when we start talking about them in a few moments' time. But we'll start with you, Jake, first. Now, I really want to go to the Cheveley Park factory to see the conveyor belt. It's just all these horses: Envoy Allen, Allaho, Sir Gerhard, Fernie Hollow. I mean, the list goes on, doesn't it? And the latest of those could be the very exciting Grange Clare West.
Yeah, so unfortunately, with the way this episode has landed, my first selection won't be as big a price as you two, but because he's running on Sunday, I really wanted to get Grange Clare West in on the team. Now, obviously, that comes with jeopardy in terms of if he wins on Sunday, then, he'll probably be a fairly short price favourite for the Ballymore. If he gets beaten, then he'll probably double in price. But that's the risk that I'm going to be taking here, because I think he is a very, very good animal. He's actually been on my radar for a long time, because obviously he won that bumper in May 2021. And last season, I think I actually backed him for the Ballymore last season, to be honest. But obviously he missed it through injury. But he returned at Navan last at the end of November, and obviously we know how Irish maidens work. You get two divisions. You get the ones who want to win, and you get the ones who don't want to win. And Grange Clare West was actually settled at the back of the ones who wanted to win, so he was in 7th place the whole way around. But I thought he showed a tremendous turn of face to make up ground, to be third, before the third last, and then just take off after that, and went on to win by 13 lengths. The form has taken a couple of hits. It's not been boosted anyway, but I don't think that really matters in the manner of his victory. I think it was a very good performance, and it surprised Willie Mullins even. He said, that he thought it was a good race going into it. But yeah, so he's hopefully going to be running in the Lords and Nace on Sunday, which I think looks a stronger race than the Charlotte Hurdle did, to be honest. I know obviously Hermes Allen was very impressive that day, but what did he beat? the question remains to be seen. But Grandclair West, I think he's got a very good opposition. If he wins the race, then it marks him as a serious horse. He may have to take on Gaelic Warrior, who is obviously a horse that we know from the Boodles, and he absolutely hacked up on his maiden hurdle as well. But I don't think he's going to be as good as Grandclair West. I think Grandclair West has got proper potential. His jumping was good. He even got jumped in across at one of the hurdles, and he dealt with that fine. I think he's got the turn of space. It's kind of weird actually that he's the Albert Bartlett favourite. I'm not quite sure why. I think he showed so much pace in that maiden hurdle, and if he wins this, there's no chance they're not going to go for the Ballymore, especially with, as you said, Cheveley Park's record. So yeah, Grandclair West, I want to get him on the team. Hopefully he does the business on Sunday, and we've got a good bet in the bag. But yeah, he's definitely my first selection. I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah, me too. And the Lawless of Nace has got a decent record as to Ballymore in the past.
It's very solid. I mean, if you were looking side by side that and the Challow as a race you want as a trial, it's kind of exactly no competition there. Yeah. I say it should be a decent renewal as well. So Gaelic Warrior, I think, is a horse that people have always just struggled to warm to. A lot of burnt fingers in the Fred Winter back then. And then you've just got the question mark of what actually was that race last time.
Well, it was nothing.
Hopefully he runs. I hope they both run. We'll find out a lot more about both. It should be an informative contest, as it always is. And you say that's a race that tends to produce Ballymore types as opposed to Albert Bartlett types.
Yeah, and you're hoping by mid-January, aren't you, really, that you kind of get these clues answered a little bit. And as you say, we should know a fair bit more about that. Dan, you like a horse to the Albert Bartlett?
Yeah, which comes back to Jake's point. Like, Grandclair West is the Albert Bartlett favourite. And I try and approach these as looking at races I can target who's a weak favourite, what market hasn't really developed. And I think the Albert Bartlett falls into that category. Like, I think Grandclair West is a Ballymore type. I wouldn't really have him down as an Albert Bartlett type. Cheveley Park in general. Obviously, the St. Allaho, I think, to the Albert Bartlett didn't really get this trip. I think they'll be more inclined to go 2.5. And then you've got Hidden Valley Lake, who I think is solid. I've got no qualms against him whatsoever, but he's short as 9-2 now in places. And for a race like the Bartlett, 9-2 in January, it's not really something I want to be getting stuck into. And then after that, you've got a kind of list of horses which are not really leaping off the page, shall we say. So it's a race I'm quite keen to have a little bit of a punt on, and one who could potentially shorten quite drastically in the run-up. And Andrew Blair White will be very happy with this selection. Barry Connell trained, Good Land, who won over the Christmas period at Leopardstown. And I thought, very impressive fashion, probably just fell under the radar because, well, there's so much racing around that time of year. It's hard to really keep up with everything that's going on. But it was a decent little racy one. I mean, he's already a Wexford bumper winner, and that race has worked out quite well. I mean, you had Landrake in there in third, who's won his first 2 starts over hurdles. The fourth won his first start over hurdles as well. So the form was in the book, and I think Barry Connell, after the race at Leopardstown, said, this was the Christmas banker. And he went off at 9-2 still. So they would have had a very good Christmas and New Year, I'm sure. But it was a decent performance that. Like, he went from the front, which wasn't the plan. And the last hurdle was out as well. So it made it a bit more of a stamina test over 2.5. And you look at the way he kind of powered clear there. The first 4 kind of pulled away to start with. And then all of a sudden, just under hands and heels, just to a touch of the reins, he really did quicken up quite nicely. And won by quite an easy 8 lengths in the end. And that performance worked quite well on the clock as well. He was 4 seconds quicker than She Wears It Well in the mare's hurdle on the same day. Obviously, carrying 10 pounds more as well. So that on the clock, it looked out to be a very fair performance. The types in behind, I think, maybe not top notches, but I think solid level. Like, the second was a Punchestown bumper winner. He'd already run behind Ashrow Diamond in a numbers hurdle over 2 miles. And 2 mile 4 is definitely more his trip. So he would have improved for that. Third was a Giggingstown Elliott horse, cost 200,000 as a point-to-point winner. Already won a bumper early in the season, clearly no mug. And in 4th and 5th, you had 2 of Willie's, who I would say more his B team. I mean, it was Madman's Game and Embassy Gardens, but they competed in the top bumpers last season, not successfully, but they were kind of in that just below the top kind of surface there. And I think, again, he beat them fairly comfortably. And I think Embassy Gardens had previously finished quite close to It's What Unites Us, who, again, has been a pretty decent novice this season as well. So the form, I think, is pretty solid. Now, that race has been won by likes of Statler, Journey With Me. I think you had Cobbler's Way, who went on to finish second in the Dublin Racing Festival. It's produced a lot of decent types. And this performance, for me, was up there nearly with them. It was one of a lot of potential. And I think he's going to appreciate stepping up in trip, definitely. I think Barry described him as a horse with loads of stamina after the race. I think afterwards they said pretty much he's definitely going to go to the 2 mile 6, Nathaniel Lacey at the Dublin Racing Festival. As it stands, I think he'd be pretty much bang up there in the market for that race as well. like based on obviously he's already got Leopardstown form. There's no way he was stopping at the line over 2.5. I think 2 mile 6 would prove no issues for him. And he's a 7-year-old. Like he's had his issues. He's not probably on the young side. I think in a Ballymore he'd maybe find 1 or 2 a bit too quick. So I think the Albert Bartlett looks a logical route for me. I say, and the thing is with that 2 mile 6 race, you don't need to even win it to then become a fancied horse for the Albert Bartlett. I remember Statler, I think, finished 4th in it, and then went off 7-2 for an Albert Bartlett. Like it depends on how you shape in that race. For me, it wouldn't be surprised if he's beaten there, but I can see him running extremely well. And his current price of 20-1, we kind of know where he's going to go. A good run at the Dublin Racing Festival definitely makes him a shorter price, if not single figures, if he wins. So at a price, I'm willing to take a chance at this stage.
Yeah, very good price and a very comprehensive argument there as well.
Before we started, Jake said to Tom, punch him in the leg if he's talking too long. I think I had about 7. I'm like, leg is completely numb. We're back. We're back in the swing of things.
I think he might face American Mike in that race.
But he's got massive question marks.
Yeah.
He's like, I think he's like 12-1 for the Albert Bartlett, but I mean that wouldn't have been the plan at the start of the season.
No.
So I think they're kind of scratching their heads with him at the minute. Again, it's that kind of race. Look at that market; it's a bit of a minefield.
Yeah, I mean,
the plan for him would have been to run on Sunday, wouldn't it? In an ideal world for them,
definitely. Yeah, if all was well,
definitely. My selection is probably not going to elicit such a comprehensive analysis as Dan did, but I really fancy perhaps the Willie Mullins 2nd or 3rd string at the moment in the Triumph betting, which is Blood Destiny. And this is a horse who I'm hoping is going to run in the Spring Juvenile at the Dublin Festival, because even though Lossiemouth might go there, I still feel that Blood Destiny could be the one for the Triumph for Willie Mullins, even though Lossiemouth has looked very impressive so far. But I feel like he's got a bit of the X factor about him, a bit of star quality. And the way that he won on his Irish debut suggested to me he has got gears to burn. The form of that has worked out really well, because the second Sir Alan that day has since won a 20-runner maiden hurdle himself. And the way that he could clear of Sir Alan was quite breathtaking, actually, in my opinion, considering it was his first run for Willie Mullins as well. Now, he finished 2nd in France behind a horse called Beau Zenith, who runs on Saturday at Sandown. So keep an eye on that one. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on, but I have almost absolutely no doubt that Blood Destiny is going to turn to a better horse than Beau Zenith. Nothing against Gary Moore at all, but I feel the way that Blood Destiny has strengthened up since that French run, and the way that he quick and clear in such great style, I think he's going to be right towards the top of the juvenile hurdle tree this season. And I think around about 20-1 at the moment. The big question is, will he win or run very well in the Spring Juvenile, which is likely to be his next destination? If he does, and obviously that's going to shorten up a lot, and that is the main thinking behind this, because Lossiemouth is more likely to go off favourites. That is, almost a certainty, I would say, at the moment. But Blood Destiny at the moment definitely delivers that each way value. And considering, I think the best is very much yet to come. And also, sometimes I find, I don't know about you guys, but in a season, you want a horse or two that you look at, they win, and you think, that's really got in my mind, that stayed there and percolated. And he was the one that did that for me. And, and you see that, I think you just got to go with it, haven't you?
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that argument. You say Lossiemouth has just taken up a big chunk of the market. Obviously, looked impressive. But what you would say is that it have been 2 slowly run races. And so a different test of the Triumph may await. Although we thought that about Vauban. That was the argument used against Vauban all of last season. But again, he just had too many gears, and the race didn't really pan out into the proper test it maybe used to be, obviously, because now we've got the Fred Winter and the fields are a bit smaller. I agree with Beau Zenith, by the way. Like, you just don't really know what you're going to get when some of these horses go to Gary Moore, do you? Some of them can be absolute top class, and we've seen him have top class juveniles before, but it's hard to know at this stage. I know plenty are taking a bit of a punt on him as well ahead of this weekend, backing him, but it's an interesting little market, the Triumph. I think Gala Marceau's second.
Second.
And obviously, debut behind
Gary Moore, Duke de Gis is third in, the one that won the trotting race.
Apparently he didn't, apparently he's got that wrong.
Yeah. I know. Yeah,
like
I don't know whether he's pulling all our legs, though.
It really is. It's an interesting market, though. And you say, it's surprising considering the form of that win that he is the price he is. And perhaps, let's say, we're going to look to the Spring Juvenile, which has always been the key trial.
Well, absolutely it has. And I was looking back at Willie Mullins' 4 winners in that race in the past. Vauban last year, of course, Quilixios, who went on to win the Triumph. And then we had, obviously that was Gordon Elliott, but looks pretty good in the context of this race. Then we have Mr. Adjudicator and Footpad, who was a very, very good horse, won the Arkle, and then Petit Parisien. So all Willie Mullins' horses have done well.
And you don't necessarily need to win that, like the Nathaniel Lacey, to then go on win a triumph. I think it's Farclas who was second, I believe, on his second start for Gordon, then went and reversed the form, I think, Mr. Adjudicator, and won at Cheltenham. Again, like these juveniles, like they improve at such vastly different rates. It's like I wouldn't really be in a rush to take 6-4 Lottie now. For all that she's been impressive, and I really do adore her, I'd much rather take a bit of a chunky price about something who could improve, again, quite exponentially.
Yeah, well, that was my thinking, really. And I think the differential in price is, he's got to prove himself at grade 1 level, and I understand that. But for me, he looked pretty exciting. So he'd be my selection in that race. Anything else, lads, for Ante-Post? Are we going to keep the rest of our little gems for the rest of the season?
Yeah, we'll keep them to myself. I've got to study as soon as this episode's finished and try and find one next week. I think anyone who's been looking knows it's a tough old gig these days. It seems to get tougher year in, year out. But hopefully those 3. I mean, last year we did it. We had a Trixie come up. We had a 3-timer in one episode. So I mean, no pressure. But like we're aiming
episode
for
3.
again.
You've got to be on form.
I feel like your average is going to be seriously down.
I mean,
it will be when you start putting up the British horses.
Yeah. It's just going to be Balco Coastal for the plate and Hermes Allen for the Ballymore.
Oh dear. Well, Jake, you'll be hoping for a good run from Grange Clare West on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be my highlight of the weekend, hopefully. So yeah, we'll reconvene next week and see what happened.
Very much so. Thanks very much for inviting me on.
Likewise, yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to the weeks ahead. Should be fun.
Yeah, very much so. And I'll be hoping on Saturday for a big run from Bo Zenith as well to try and frank the form with Blood Destiny. Not that it needs franking, really. I was so impressed. On that Irish debut, thanks very much for watching The Jump Show. That was the first episode of our Cheltenham Ante-Post series. Plenty more to come, but for now, that's it from us. Make sure to follow us on social media, Instagram and on Twitter as well, The Jump Show. And make sure you like this video. But for now, thanks very much for watching and goodbye.